Hi, our guest today is John Erickson, who's running for the 3-year Board of Selectmen seat that's open in the April 4th annual town election. John, welcome.
Welcome, John.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to ask you the same question we've asked every candidate. This is your chance to talk to the voters. John, why are you running?
Well, Kevin, I'm running because I care about the community. But to give you a little history, I'm a lifelong Milford resident, as you both know. I started my father's family business after graduating college from WPI in 1990, which is a business I still run to this day. But in 2004, I started working for the town of Milford in the Department of Inspections, and
You were the assistant building inspector.
I was. And, you know, fast forward, progressed to 2011, and I became the building commissioner. So in my past 14 years of municipal experience and 7 years as a department head, or 6 years, whatever that math is, it's given me a unique insight and perspective to town government, town operations.
How things are done
Yeah, you and I have...
or not done.
Done or not done. You and I have had this discussion on
Yes.
many occasions. So that led me to, you know, my inspiration 3 years ago to run for school committee to, you know, lend some of my experience, lend some of my insight to an elected office. And as we all know, I wasn't successful my first attempt at that. Came back the next year, and I currently serve on the school committee. So
You have 1 year left, correct?
I do have 1 year left.
On your term, okay.
So, you know, with what I've observed in the town and the decisions that I've made in the last several years especially, but, you know, throughout my 7 years of full-time employment, it's just made me reflect on what I may have done different or would have done different. And I want to lend my experience and my decision-making abilities and my insight into town hall, town operations, the needs of the community, to take on a different role and challenge, which is that of your next selectman.
And you felt this was the year to do it?
I absolutely felt this was a year to do it because I don't agree with a lot of decisions that, frankly, the incumbent has made.
Now, if you're going to pick the top 2 items that keep coming back to the table that you're thinking about, what are they?
Coming back to the
Yeah,
table?
well,
or
I mean,
moving
the hot buttons, the top 2 things.
Things that you do differently.
You do different, the top button, top 2.
Well, what I think I would do differently is embrace our department heads, our highly qualified professionals that are in this town, embrace some of their ideas, because they really have a vision that most of the residents don't have or wouldn't have, because they're not paid to do that. You know, we have just as an example, our town engineer, our town planner, 2 of the most highly professional individuals I've ever met in my life, either in construction or in my town hall experience, who have brought forth a number of ideas that were not embraced or were dismissed. So that's my first order of business, is to bring everyone together to revisit some ideas and opportunities that have been missed.
Okay.
And what else?
And what else? Well, what else is to deal with, you know, the rest of the problems that are on the horizon or already on our plate. The stormwater management is well publicized.
Yeah.
Of late, it's been a requirement.
Although there may not be an EPA left by the time
Yeah,
that comes around.
Well, and there may not be. and if that's gone and those mandates are gone,
That's a good thing, huh?
by all means, we're the beneficiaries of that. But we can't take that approach to it.
I know, because they're there now, so. So stormwater management, what else is looming on the horizon?
Well, looming on the horizon is the potential purchase of the Milford Water Company,
Reuse of Middle School East.
reuse of Middle School East, you know,
Okay.
well documented and
Now,
discussed.
now, I know you don't have the background info that, only the current selectmen and finance committee have of what's going on with the water company purchase. But just looking at it from what we do know, where the intent was, we could pay for it with the current rate structure. Does that sound good or bad to you?
In a perfect world, it's good. You know, if we were in a bubble and everything was done properly, it's certainly a benefit. It seems that we could get better compliance with possibly lower rates. But what it really comes across to me as is a big risk for a small potential reward. And I've had this discussion with a number of, you know, town residents and also town employees. If something goes wrong, if one piece goes wrong or doesn't play out as we anticipate, it's a bad decision.
Well, it can be very, very expensive, and having been a selectman in a town that owns its own water source, owns its own water company, which is Upton, the compliance issues are significant. Hiring the right and quality, right people to manage it is difficult. I mean, there's a lot of burden that goes with it.
I think the problem with discussing it is we're all sitting on the, other than
Outside looking in.
Town Council Jerry Moody, the three-member Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, and now the FinCom chairman. Nobody else really knows what's being talked about,
Right.
other than they agreed on a price. Now they're going through every other thing.
Yeah, and we understand that that needs to be confidential at this juncture.
Right, I'm not complaining about that because there's a lot of stuff where they're really vetting the deal.
Right.
But it's hard to talk about it because we don't know what they've looked at.
We don't. We have so many questions out of the gate, but to take over a private operations as a municipality in this day and age, it's not something that was built like a lot of municipal water companies, you know, and even our sewer department from its infancy to its current state, to take over, you know, a $63 million entity and any inherent problems that are within their infrastructure. Again, if one thing goes wrong, it presents a lot of challenges. It's not insurmountable, but, you know, for example, if something at the new plant needs to be replaced or one section of piping needs to be replaced, we don't have the funds to immediately, you know, perform that work. We have to get
Even they have to do it and then file with the state for a rate hike to recover that money
Right.
going forward. So they eat that money now.
Well, you'd have to, you also have to form, you would have to form an enterprise to support the water system.
Like the sewer house.
Like the sewer.
Sure,
So
you'd
have to throw
establish
money.
an enterprise fund, but the point is, even with an enterprise fund, and even if it was, you know,
Adequate.
well, adequate,
Yeah.
it needs town meeting approval to be spent.
So now so what happens now, if you're spending capital equipment, does it take 2/3 or a majority? May take 2/3.
Correct.
If you're transferring from stabilization, so now what happens?
Under the Municipal Reform Act that passed last year, it's now majority vote to put anything in a stabilization type account and still 2/3 to take it out.
Take it out, right.
They simplified putting it in, but they left
taking
it.
taking it out is tougher.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But the point being, you know, we've all recognized, I think, that we own it, whether, you know, inherently, as ratepayers, we own it, whether
You're paying for
it's
whatever happens
municipal owned
now.
or
Right.
privately owned. But as a private corporation, they do have a lot more flexibility to immediately address any problems and ultimately seek a rate hike to offset their costs.
and they also don't have to go with the they don't have to go with the lowest bidder.
No, they
concept.
haven't been. They, of course, give it to the sister company.
Right, so what happens
No matter
is-
what the DPU,
Right.
every DPU decision has this pages, 2 or 3 pages in it about them not being able to do that, but they do it anyway with the sister RH
Right,
White companies.
Right, but what happens is if it goes to the town, now they have to run to a totally different bidding situation.
Or have highway do it.
Or have highway do it.
And
now.
highway is already over, maxed out.
So,
Right.
so now you have to
Yeah,
add
and the
resources
point
to
being, the
that.
town has to go through the public procurement,
Right.
Correct.
which is prevailing wage, which
Bingo.
the private entity
Doesn't
doesn't
have.
have to do, so.
And then
And I don't know if you heard about prevailing wage, but I was at the Board of Health recently. The trash contract, pickup contract is going up $100,000 because the prevailing wage in Milford is tied to the highway department pay schedule, and it went up.
Yeah, I had heard bits of that, but not totally up to speed on that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, prevailing wage has always been a major issue for any municipality that's going to do any work, because that's the regulations they have to follow.
33 something an hour.
Yeah, and private industry can do it a heck of a lot cheaper.
But, and that's just one of the many considerations
Right.
with this purchase. There are so many, as you alluded to earlier, we have to establish presumably a Board of Water Commissioners.
Right.
Are they elected?
Are they appointed?
Probably appointed at first and move into elected, but
It
who
could be.
knows?
Well, that-
Probably, but we need, there's so many pieces to this
You know, are you
decision
going to
that-
keep the employees? Are you going to do a transition of their management over a period of time? Those are all the things we don't know that they're talking about.
Yeah, and again, presumably, 3 or 4 of these aspects would be town meeting articles that
Yes.
Right.
if we approve to purchase the water company, following that up would be an article to establish a Board of Water Commissioners.
And that may.
Even more, are they going to warranty what they're selling us for
Yeah,
a period
that's-
of time?
Right, and then there's, the other issue is that and I'm not sure because I haven't looked into it, but it may require a charter change because.
It does not.
It does not?
No.
Okay, so a board, because when we established in Upton, we established a DPW director, it required us to go to the legislature and get a certain article passed to do.
But that's a great point,
It would
because
be town by law.
there's a lot of consideration that if we're going to purchase the Milford Water Company, do we then go the next step and establish a DPW?
Well,
Rather-
right.
Well,
Right.
see, the problem is, that may all be being discussed behind closed doors, but just nobody knows it.
Well, those discussions, a DPW director, a DPW department, and that kind of thing, that would be something that could be set on the table right now, because that's something that,
Well, not if, you know, they may be saying, you know, we need to address that, and they agreed. But anyway, let's go back to some of
Well-
the things. What type of decision that's been made in the last 2 or 3 years, or decision not made, would you have done differently? Can you give me an example? Is it like a GIS system decision?
I can give a number of examples.
Okay, I'd like to get one.
You know, the hiring practices that have been followed lately have deviated from the past practices. It's been well reported that, you know, there's been 5 or 6 hires in the past 1 or 2 years, and, you know, the practices have changed from position to position, from asking for a recommendation from a department head with town administrator and then not accepting it, from asking for a ranking and choosing number 2 or number 3 to not asking for a recommendation.
But isn't that the board's right to choose who they want? If they're the ultimate hiring authority, and you have 3 finalists, and instead of going for number 1, they go for number 2, for whatever reason, isn't that their prerogative?
By all means, it's their prerogative, but what's lost on, or I don't know if it's lost, the process has changed multiple times. Even to the point of when we looked at a department head, and, you know, it was advertised that bring forth a hiring committee, make a recommendation, but the board can appoint from any candidate that's applied.
Right.
So these are some of the hiring decisions, and more the processes, not the decision, because it's not about the individuals that were hired. It's about the
Having a
process.
process
so
and
you're,
following
that
it.
so
changed.
suggest that processes change from time to time.
So if you're doing 3 hires in a year, and they're all the same level, it should be the same process.
In my mind, it should be,
But it
yes.
hasn't been.
It absolutely hasn't been.
Because in one, they just may say, well, we'll take the top recommendation. In one case, they said, no, we want number 2 by a 2-to-1 vote. And then in another one, I don't even remember what they did.
Yeah, but in reality, if you're hiring, you know, it depends on the level of hire that you're looking to hire.
Right.
But if you're looking for a department clerk or an assistant, and you're not asking for the recommendation from a department head, I understand if you don't follow it because you think that's something,
Yeah.
somebody else, for some reason, is a better candidate
Yeah.
than the recommendation. But to not even ask for it is just wrong, in my opinion. But more than just the hires, you know, the creation of the IT department. I've been in town hall for 14 years before we ever had our own in-house townside IT department or employee. I saw firsthand that we were better served with a vendor, an outside contractor. That worked flawlessly. I understand some of the reasoning behind it. There was a lot of equations to private industry.
Well, no, the comment I heard back on that was, as long as you have somebody knowledgeable enough to understand those invoices, and to say these are the right procurement decisions, go with an outside contractor. But we didn't have that person in-house.
Well, we didn't, but we've put the finance director in charge of our IT department, who's really overseeing all of it. So,
Right.
again, I understand the justification for it. It's something I just strongly disagree with. Again, from being in town hall and working there for 14 years and seeing the various successes and failures of what we've done over those 14 years, and seeing what the impact is to the taxpayers as a result of creating that IT department. But I understand the decision-making that went into it. I just disagree with it.
Now, you and I have had philosophical discussions over the last couple of years about what the town does with its money.
Mm-hmm.
And different spending patterns. I mean, I find it very interesting. Let's take last fall's special town meeting. The town had $6 million in free cash and spent $4.5 million on capital, but did it by putting it on the tax rate. You could have taken that out of the free cash and cost the public nothing.
Well, it's the same.
The answer to that, though, is, well, then next year we can't make that up.
Well, no, I think what we did was we spent a certain amount out of free cash, but then we returned,
$3 million.
no, I think it was 2.4 million to
Well, it's not actually returning, it's just lowering the amount of taxes people would pay. It's
Yeah.
not like anybody gets a check. I mean, you're a homeowner, you know that.
correct.
It's just your tax bill didn't go up as high as it could.
It's a proper line item from a finance perspective.
Correct.
And they refer to it as returning it to the taxpayer.
Right.
It would be just the same as not levying, levying it was 2.4
2.4
were
million.
returned. It's the same as levying 2.4 lower.
Right,
Well, that's in effect what it
Right.
did,
right.
but
Yeah.
it didn't, because they still levied it.
They levied it and returned it, so.
Yeah,
you know,
but that raises the levy limit.
Right, so the levy limit goes up.
Yes.
So what happens is next year
So next year, you have that higher levy limit plus the 2.5 that
Right.
you're allowed under Prop 2.5.
Right.
Actually, no, I don't think that does make the levy limit go up.
Well,
Our
that's,
levy limit's a levy limit. It's not based on what we levy.
well, you're actually right, because then what happens is that's what keeps you below the levy limit. So when they
Yes.
say that Milford is below the levy limit, you're below by that amount. Well, first, the budget didn't tax up to it, and then you return some of it. So between the two of them, let's say you left $1 million below the levy limit. You only taxed to within $1 million of levy limit. So there's $1 million you have still left in the limit. Then when you return 2.4, now you're 3.4 below the levy limit.
Right, right.
Which
You're-
is the same as not levying to the
Correct.
highest level to begin with. So it's a little bit of a take it out of one pocket, put it in
into
another pocket.
Right.
Now, if I read the Milford
net
Daily News
effect.
correctly, as a school committee member, you're arguing the town has that money to give more than 2% or 3% to the schools.
Yes, I absolutely am making that argument.
And,
We're
and you believe they should.
No, I haven't come to that conclusion yet. We're still working as a committee.
Right.
What we realize is that, we have a directive or a suggestion to go to 2 or 2.5%
Correct.
increase. But when we look at our contractual obligations and our out-of-district expenses, and we see what the result will be of keeping to that 2 or 2.5%,
You can't.
we can't and offer the same services. So we're still working with the FinCom as a committee to understand the effects of if we go forward with a proposed 4 or 4.5% budget, what the effects to the town are.
That's the argument we had in Mendon, where one year they asked us to do level funding, the next year they said level services. And
Two
I
different
went back
spots.
as a chairman of a board with a budget, I went back to the finance committee and said, now, if you're saying level services, that means the budget's going up to maintain them at the level they're at.
Correct.
If you say level funding, it's you don't want me to spend a dime more.
More. Yeah, see, and most people don't understand the difference between level
Well,
funding
I
and
know
level
you
service.
do. But I'll take your side of the argument for a minute by saying, okay, if teacher raises are going up this much, the cost of goods went up that much, and you're only given 2.5%.
You can't get
But
there
just
from
to
here.
stay even, you need 4. You have a valid case for 4.
And that's what we're looking at, again, as a committee. We know the town can afford it, but if we go forward, it's an increased burden to the taxpayer. And what's the balance? What do we want to ask for? What do we want to ask for support to maintain these services? And we're still working that out. We have 2 meetings scheduled for next week, but it's really about looking at the big picture. both for this year, and then we're really going to be looking going forward to how much we want to invest in our schools. Do we want to catch up, because we are behind
Yes.
on net school spending, per pupil spending?
But
Well, there is nothing that says, though, you can't give the schools annually 4% and hold the fire department to 2%. That's just it's just a across-the-board decision to say everybody come in at 2.5%.
yeah, I mean, you can take a little from here and give a little there, but the argument that I've always had when I was involved in education or in a school committee was money doesn't necessarily equate to quality of education. There are more pieces of the puzzle than just how much money you spend on education. Quality of teachers, there's a whole bunch of elements.
But you
to
also have to maintain where you
well,
are.
that's, if you maintain level services, then you're not moving a district forward, you're not moving it backwards. But if you're limited to 2.5 increase, if you limit yourself to that, and the cost of maintaining level funding is 4, then you're moving backwards.
I mean, in your case, you have what, 98 more ELL students than you had the year before?
We
Or is it
have,
$98,000? I can't remember.
if we're rounding off, we have 100 more ELL students this year than we did 2 years ago. So an average of a gain of 50 each year. It was
Yeah.
40-something, 50-something.
But the town, the finance committee has been good in funding that increase beyond the normal
Yeah.
percentage increase to school budget, haven't they?
They have been. The Finance Committee has carved out the ELL and special ed gains,
Right.
or not gains, but
Increases.
increases. But really, it's, you can't look at those gains in a box and say, those are okay, and stick to 2%, because you really have to look at the entire, I mean,
Right.
can we afford this budget or not? And how much are we trying to invest in our schools?
Well, you know, I'll give you an example. If the finance committee's been hitting on you guys in schools, saying you got people choicing out, not enough choicing in, well, maybe, or staying in, maybe you need to invest some new programs to attract people.
Exactly. You can't have it all, right?
Choice
Again,
is really a bad situation, because years ago, getting choiced in was a great thing. But now what happens is that you pick up some extra cost for that choice, those people that choice in. So now you get penalized, and then when they go away, you lose a real big hunk of change, and it's hard to recover that.
Yeah, well, we actually make slightly more on a student choicing in than it costs us on a student going out.
But the issue is, for the FinCom, they're more going out than coming in,
Right, so you lose it.
And there are, and
and they want to know why.
well, and that's what's really hard to quantify, right? We recognize that, you know, it's been basically a 10-year trend of the
Yep.
shift, and it's only been the last 3 or 4 years that we've maybe they recognized it earlier, but it's really been the only last 3 or 4 years that we focused on it. And the district has made a number of improvements, from the new school, the new administration, new program offerings. So I firmly believe that shift is changing, and the numbers indicate that this year. But it's going to be a gradual shift, because when you lose one, it's very difficult to gain that student back.
Right.
Well, and it also, education, it takes time to see results. It doesn't happen in 1 year. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to really understand what the trend lines are.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been said 1 year isn't a trend.
And there's been dramatic change in the educational paradigms too over the last 4 or 5 years, which has a significant impact on when kids come in and when kids go out. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
Well, let's get you off school
Oh,
committee.
sorry
Okay.
about that. I'm sorry.
No,
about
no,
that.
I'm just looking at the amount of time left. Let's get you off school committee. We've got about 5 minutes left. This is an opportunity for you to tell the voters why they should vote for you.
Say anything you want. Well,
So, Don, the floor is yours. Why should people vote for you?
Okay, so again, it's what I have to offer. My experience as a small business owner for well over 20 years, my municipal experience, which has given me an insight that I honestly would not have if I were on the school committee for 15 years or multiple terms. Learning town hall government and municipal government from the inside out is I think a unique and a very highly qualified attribute. It's what's inspired me to run for school committee. My record of decision making, representing the town for nearly 15 years. Kevin, as you know, my decisions in my day job are not always popular decisions. I can do a lot of things right. And sometimes the community will focus on, something that they're still not happy with. But, I have the wherewithal to just keep going, to do things in a positive manner.
Well, let's talk about things people aren't happy with. So somebody's walking by a piece of property on a given street, and they don't like the way it looks, so they call your office. But there may be no laws broken.
Well, that's a very common occurrence. I actually had a woman.
Or there may be, but
Well, there may be. One of my colleagues at Town Hall said it best. We're not Better Homes and Gardens. We can't affect those kinds of changes or regulations.
I might not look the way your house looks, but if you're not breaking the building code, you're not breaking the zoning code, you're not breaking health or fire safety violations, there's nothing you can do.
That's why they call it private property.
Well said, Al, because I often tell people it's not how I would choose to, keep my home, but it's not illegal.
Right.
There's no violation.
But then they think you're not doing anything.
Well, yeah, I had somebody at a forum yesterday that
I heard some lady was saying, I keep calling your office and they do nothing.
well, and that's clearly not true, but she actually blames me for the every dilapidated property in town, and I understand that's her perception.
But it's not the case.
It's not
You
the
can't make
case.
somebody paint their house.
Right.
I can't.
You're not the grass police, you're not the shrub police, you're not the painting police.
Well, actually, you do have nuisance.
Well, there are
The
nuisance
grass
laws.
is never mowed.
Yeah.
Well,
You got the nuisance.
but here's the thing: we do have the nuisance bylaw, but is the grass not mowed to the level that it's going to harbor vermin and health hazards,
And if
or is
that's-
it just unsightly? Because we've been to district court with a magistrate
And he throws you out if it's just
who's thrown
unsightly.
us out. Yes,
And they'll do that in a New York second if you're ridiculous.
absolutely.
And they don't.
And you also can't afford to be in court every day.
Well, that's the other piece of the puzzle. The cost, you have to take, it's ridiculous.
Well, if you were in court every day, your job wouldn't be getting done. The rest of your job.
Absolutely correct. Every time we go to court, it keeps us from dealing with multiple complaints or building permit applications or inspections.
Okay, if you had all the money in the world
Good question.
and at least one other vote on the Board of Selectmen,
What would you do?
what problem in town would you tackle?
Well, that's an interesting question, and
The-
one
the-
I wasn't expecting.
Well, I know the number one thing is you need a second vote on the Board of Selectmen to do anything.
Well, yeah.
So if you had a magic
It's a very
wand,
easy
what would you do?
Very easy way to count. There's 3 members, you need 2 to vote to do something, regardless of whether it's unanimous or 2 to 1. But let's say
You had that.
you had 2 votes, you knew the money was there, what problem would you tackle that you see in the town?
I think personally, I would tackle middle school east.
Ooh.
I would.
Now, I know you favor keeping it. Maybe I'm misstating it.
No, you are misstating it. I want to consider it
You
further.
see a need that it could fill.
I see a need with the space at the town hall,
Space at the high school.
administrative space at the high school that's being used as administrative space now that could be used
There's something-
as nursing offices, health space to
Right.
open up more classrooms.
And those uses could move into Middle East.
Those could move into either a renovated, knock down the addition, renovate the existing, keep the beautiful architecture that's downtown. I see the need.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I see the need for both from the town hall side and the school administration side from a physical space needs, but I also see a little bit of a disconnect because I don't know how many people realize how closely the school administration works with the finance department at the town hall every single day. To put them under the same roof would just be a dynamic that really improves the workflow and
That's an
their
interesting.
problems every day.
Now, that's probably not thought of by most people, because they are hand in glove. I mean, the school finances eventually, the town hall does the payroll.
Right.
It's coming out of there. I mean, the work flows from the school to the treasurer who pays out and things like that. So you're right, right now it's being either, emailed, hand-delivered, putting them together in a common
Yeah,
space
Most
would be great.
people don't understand the dynamics between the town and the school districts, the school, they really run, they really are, they are together.